It's been a week since we learned that the Ukrainian vet honored in Parliament fought in a Nazi unit. That mistake has raised questions about who was allowed into this country after the war. Now, Jewish advocacy groups are calling on Ottawa to release documents about alleged Nazi war criminals living in Canada. Irwin Cotler was the Justice Minister in Paul Martin's government. He's now Canada's special envoy on preserving Holocaust remembrance and combating antisemitism. And David Matas is the honorary legal counsel for B'nai Brith. Irwin Cotler and David Matas, thank you both, gentlemen, for being here. I appreciate it very much. Mr. Cotler, I'm going to start with you. Obviously, this whole incident has raised questions about how this particular person, Mr. Hunka, entered Canada. But what do you think Canadians need to know about the history in this country of letting Nazis or people aligned with Nazis into the country after the war?
Well, it's been a very sordid history. It began really right after the war. In 1948, Canada acquiesced to a UK memorandum that at the time had come, quote, to bury the past, and arguing against bringing Nazi war criminals to justice. And so the situation that developed was that it became easier to get into Canada, as Professor Irving Abella wrote, easier to get into Canada if you were a Nazi than if you were a Jew. And you had an astonishing situation of secret orders and councils being passed by the Canadian government, quashing, for example, judicial deportation orders against collaborators with the Nazis, at the same time as you had orders and councils excluding the Jews. So the history was sordid. It continued in 1962, another cabinet memorandum blaming the Jews for seeking to even bring Nazi war criminals to justice and accusing Canadians of pandering to Jewish revenge if we were to bring Nazi war criminals to justice. And as late as 1981, and with this I'll close, another cabinet memorandum saying that there were no legal remedies to bring Nazi war criminals to justice, but it didn't make a difference because there were no Nazi war criminals in Canada in any case. So that was a very sordid history that preceded the Deschênes Commission and its important revelations.
Yeah, and Mr. Matas, you represented the B'nai Brith organization before that inquiry on war criminals in Canada, the Deschênes Commission, named for the judge. At that time, since then, the federal government has withheld a second part of that commission's report, and that was really about Nazis, war criminals who settled in Canada. And you've been lobbying ever since to try and have that part released. Why was it kept secret? Why is it still being kept secret?
As far as I can tell, there's no good reason. There was a historical report written for the Deschênes Commission by Alti Rotel, which was Deschênes said should be released in whole. It was released with many deletions, and then some of the deletions were eventually removed. And you could see that there was no justification for the deletions. And I expect what we'll see in the future is once we get the records, that there is no justification for withholding.
Do you believe you're going to get the records? I should say that this week the Immigration Minister, Mark Miller, said that the government would take another look at it, whether the records should be released. Do you think that you will get them, Mr. Matas? And do you think this incident in particular actually might help with that?
There's definitely a movement to get the records. I welcome Minister Miller's remarks. There's also a parliamentary committee recommendation that all historical records 25 years older or more should be released. And there's the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance recommendation, and Canada's part of the alliance, that the memory of the Holocaust should take precedence over these exemptions that otherwise apply. So yes, we'll eventually get the records. I just hope to see it in my lifetime.
Yeah. Mr. Cotler, how about you? I mean, obviously this incident was very upsetting for many people and kind of shocking for many people. Are you hopeful that it could lead to some good here?
Well, I hope it would lead to some good, because there's a larger issue here of, how did the Nazi war criminals get in, and how were they able to avoid any accountability all this time? So I really think at this point we need to open up the archives of history to expose the sunlight of disinfectant and arrive at the truth, because we have both the historical truth and we have the contemporary situation where we don't want to allow the Putin's Russia to weaponize the situation and support his quote-unquote false denazification claim, read the Ukraine. So we need a parallel initiative at this point of an international independent tribunal for the crime of aggression in Ukraine at the same time as we open up the archives of history regarding suspected Nazi war criminals in Canada.
Mr. Matas, one of the things that I read from the Commission is that the Commission made a decision not to find this particular division that Mr. Hunka was associated with guilty of collective war crimes. I wonder what you make of that and how that has impacted what you've seen over the past week.
I can see that the Nuremberg Tribunal identified the SS as a criminal organization and identified any member of the SS as a criminal as being a member of the organization. And I think that has much more persuasive force than what the Deschênes Commission recommended. I also point out that we do not have the background records that would go into greater detail about this particular division. And I would say, generally, if we want to avoid reiteration of the mistakes of the past, as Irwin Cotler was saying, we have to remember the past, and we can't remember the past unless we know the past, and we can't know the past until we get the records.
And Mr. Cotler, what has this incident sort of brought to light for you in terms of understanding the past or vetting the past or making sure that we are still thinking about what has happened?
Well, I think it's brought the importance of Holocaust remembrance, of the imperative of combating any forms of Holocaust denial and distortion, of the imperative of bringing Nazi war criminals to justice, those that still are with us, and of course about the imperative of pursuing international justice as a whole, as a priority on the Canadian justice agenda as a matter of principle and priority. We've avoided this for far too long. We have to make the pursuit of international justice a priority, both in historical terms, in opening up the archives of the past and seeking the truth, and in contemporary terms, in making sure that we combat all forms of injustice.
Mr. Matas, same question to you in terms of what this incident has told you about our understanding of history.
Right now, I would say that when it comes to remembering the victims, we've done a lot. But when it comes to remembering the murderers, we've done very little. And the victims were totally innocent. If we're really going to learn from the past, we have to find the lessons that can be learned from what the murderers did and how they escaped justice. And right now, we're not able to fully learn that lesson because of the failure to disclose the records.
Okay, well, I do hope that we see those records, and if we do, I hope you'll both come back and discuss them, because I know that's such an important part of our history. Thank you so much for making the time, gentlemen. Irwin Cotler, David Matas, thank you.